In 1962, specifically on the night of June 11th, Frank Morris, John Anglin, and Clarence Anglin decided on a quiet summer night to carry out a daring escape plan. The plan would require great precision and tight execution that took months to prepare. Frank Morris was the mastermind and decided to choose the Anglin brothers because they were known for their swimming skills, and each of the three prisoners had a life story full of events that shaped his personality and made him able to think of escaping from the prison that everyone considered to be different, able to be released. Frank Morris was born on September 1st, 1926 and was orphaned when he was only 13 years old, and was forced at that time to spend his life in one of the foster homes in Washington. And from there, he began his path to crime from a young age or crime. His work in his life was when he was only 1 year old, which was the beginning of a series of crimes that are throughout his life, from drug possession to armed robbery to stealing cars. Every time he was arrested, he planned to get out of the prison he was in, and this increased his fame in the world of crime, to the point that he was known as the smart criminal. The one who could escape from any prison was known for his extraordinary intelligence. His IQ was 133 points on the IQ test, meaning he was in the top 2% of the world's population. And not only was he smart, he had an exceptional ability to plan, organize, and escape from prisons. It was a game for him, the last of which was 1 year before he entered Alcatraz, when he managed to escape from Al-Waziana prison, where he was sentenced to 10 years, imprisoned in a bank robbery case, and remained on the run for a year. Before he was arrested again, he was trying to commit another robbery, and in January 1960, Morris was transferred to Alcatraz prison in an attempt by the authorities to destroy his hopes of escaping from prison. But when he arrived, he considered the challenge more difficult than the one before it. Nothing more than that. He was certain that even Alcatraz would not be able to hold him, and from his first day in prison, he began studying every detail. The timing of the guards, the locations of the cameras, the way the doors open, every big and small detail. A year later, they received news that two old acquaintances had been transferred with him to Alcatraz prison, and these two were John Anglin and his brother Clarence Anglin. John Anglin was born on February 5th, 1930, and Clarence was exactly 1 year younger than him. The two were born in Georgia to a family of 14 brothers and a sister, a poor family who all worked in agriculture since they were young. And John and Clarence, since they were young, used to enter swimming races in frozen lakes and win. But the life of poverty made them take the path of theft and crime. It started with simple crimes such as stealing chickens and stealing crops. I say that they went until they reached the bank robbery in the early 50s. Their plans for the robbery were always characterized by boldness and precision, to the point that they would enter the bank in broad daylight. And they always did not hurt anyone during the robbery. And according to what they said, they never had a weapon with them. And the only time they were seen with a weapon was a toy gun. But on January 17, 1958, while they were robbing the Bank of Columbia, Alabama, they were arrested. They were sentenced to 35 years in prison, some of them in Florida State Prison. But when they tried to escape from it, they were transferred to Levine and Russell Federal Prison, and those who also tried to escape from it were transferred again to Atlanta Prison. And when they tried to escape from Atlanta Prison as well, they were told that these kids would not be served with anything but Alcatraz Prison. And on October 24th, 1960, they arrived at Alcatraz prison, and then they arrived immediately at Clarence on January 16th of the year 461. John Oaklands, when they arrived at Alcatraz and met Morris, who they had known for a few days, and this acquaintance turned into a strong friendship, especially after they learned that he was famous for his intelligence and ability to escape from prisons. As for Morris, he saw that these two were the ideal choice for the escape team. Morris knew their swimming skills, especially in cold water. So these were the ones who would be able to swim with him in the cold water of Francisco Bay if they succeeded in escaping from prison and while they were, and the prison loopholes. Another prisoner named Alan West heard them, and because his cell was adjacent to Morse's cell, he contacted him and said to him, "I can show you the way to escape, but on the condition that you take me with you." He said that his job in prison was to clean the area above the roof of the cells, and one day, while he was working working, he discovered a ventilation hole leading to the roof. When Morse heard this from him, he felt that there was really hope for escape, as he expected, and he began to use his intelligence to make a well-thought-out plan so that they could escape from this hole. And after studying the design of the building, he was able to know that the small ventilation holes located under the sink in each cell had connected passages behind them, through which they could reach the ventilation hole that he said was set. But the problem was that these holes were very small. It was impossible for an adult to pass through them, no matter how thin. And from here began the first challenge in the most famous, a prison escape operation throughout history. Mars, with his intelligence, they figured out how to exploit one of Alcatraz's strengths to succeed in warfare. The salty water surrounding the prison made some parts of the cement walls weaker than the rest. One of these walls was the area surrounding the ventilation holes in the cells. The prison did not maintain them regularly like other exposed areas. Here, Morse felt that using a few simple tools, he could widen the holes and get through them. This was the first step in their plan. They would not steal the soup spoons they ate with from the prison kitchen, which they would use in the digging process, but the problem was how would they be able to cover these holes after they started digging? And when would they dig without anyone noticing or hearing a knocking sound from outside the cell? After consulting with the four of them, they agreed that the digging time would be from 6:30 to 7:30 in the evening, because this was the time when the prisoners were allowed to play music, and the four of them would take turns watching the guards' movements so that no one would notice what they were doing. After they finished, they would cover the hole with cardboard boxes the same color as the wall and put some junk on it, so that it would not be obvious that there was anything strange. After weeks of digging, Morse, being the mastermind, began looking for new tools to speed up the digging process a bit. He found an old saw that was thrown away in the prison storeroom and an old vacuum cleaner that they used to clean. He removed the motor from it and made a primitive digging tool to help them carry out the plan. At that time, many prisoners knew what was happening in Morse's cell and his friends. Some testimonies even say that there were 80 prisoners who knew what was happening. However, in order to take revenge on the authorities and break the myth of the impossible escape from Alcatraz, none of them reported it or even asked anyone to stay with them. They were also being watched, and one by one, the plan began to develop. They made faces out of soap, paper, and dirt that came out of the holes and kept putting them on their beds as if they were sleeping and kept digging all night. Clarence was responsible for collecting hair for these dolls since he worked in the prison barbershop. After months of digging and expanding, all that was left was for them to think about the most important part of the plan, which was how will they be able to cross the Gulf water and reach the nearest shore without drowning or getting eaten by sharks. One day, Morris found a paper from a magazine called Or the Famous Mechanics. There was an article written explaining how to make a boat out of rubber using simple tools, and from here he got the idea to make a boat to escape with, and the material they would use was the jackets or coats that prisoners wore in the very cold weather. These clothes were made of rubber, so they were able to gather more than 50 people over time, and they stole an old sewing machine from a workshop. They also stole steam pipes to heat the rubber and fix the welds